This is Dragon Age, the Veilguard. We're here on Xbox Series X, and this code was provided by the EA Content Creator Group. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the return of Dragon Age. We're coming hot off the Inquisition many years later. But in the game, you definitely feel like you're coming hot off the Inquisition. And you dive into the role of the Rook. The Rook is an individual that has been thrust into the role of leadership upon a group of individuals that are tasked with stopping the end of the world because the elven gods are causing problems and you need to stop them. You're putting together a ragtag team of troops that all have emotional problems, and you're there to coddle and support them across a variety of stories that continue to recap over and over again what's happening. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting time. I would say the game is okay. It's lengthy, it's expansive. If you were looking for deep role-playing, you're not really gonna get that here. And it seems like while the world and role-playing games past Dragon Age by, Dragon Age just literally firmly stayed in the past. This game very much plays like something from the 360 era. And I wouldn't say that in necessarily the best of ways. It's not like with Warhammer recently, Space Marine 2 there, which felt like a 360 game in the best of ways. This feels like a 360 game in terms of limited scope, linear environments, a real lack of choice that I've not really seen in an RPG for a while, especially for a franchise that typically really does thrive on, I would say, deep decisions that are meaningful. Like BioWare, back in the day when you saw a BioWare logo pop up on the screen, you knew you were in for a pretty incredible time. I think those days have long passed, sadly, but at the same time, I still look forward to their new adventures, because I do believe somewhere there, the magic of BioWare is still quite alive, and you get little glimpses of it sort of within this experience. But it is a little perplexing in the sense that, like, there really is no, like, deep decisions in this game. And the story and the dialogue is rather weak and really quite repetitive. They love recapping in this game. Oh, do they love to recap what's going on and talk about the same sort of things over and over again. I can't be the only one that was sitting there being like, wow, they really like to repeat themselves. I know sometimes in my reviews people like to go, oh, you repeat yourself, but they really like to repeat themselves in the story. You are like, you'll do something, and then they'll talk about doing that same thing 3 billion times over and over again. It's kind of, and it's also like, it's a little bit like, I think Star Trek Discovery, from what I watched of that show, little bits of it, where kind of your crew always has to, like, you know, hug and cheer on each other over and over again. It's like way too happy and like propped up of like, yo, everything's cool and good. We've got to do this because we're a team, and it just gets obnoxious. And you don't even really get to know or really care about your characters. Some just pop in, they got like a little side story thing, and then they're like, you know, just another part of the team that's to be cannon fodder. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I have lots more to talk about the game overall, but we should talk about the technical details, since that's kind of what we do here on the console. So for the Series X, we've been seeing the performance mode. That's what you've been seeing the whole time thus far. That's how I chose to play the game. So for performance, it's like 720p internally at 60 FPS. And then it's supposed to be like a temporally upscaled thing to 1440p. It's really blurry. That's where I'm saying like 360 game too, where we're down to 720p. But like, you know, usually with the temporal upscales, you get like a lot clearer of a picture, and it's like, eh. So FSR2 looks to be our thing. And yeah, you know, at least it is a smooth performance. And oh, the FSR waters, like FSR is everywhere in this game. The particle effects that you shoot off, the like the environment in the backdrop, water, birds. It's so like pixelized and blurry, it's disgusting. There's a photo mode too. The sooner we get away from FSR on console, the better. Holy, is that thing ugly. Okay, seriously, I'm kind of done tired of even like pretending like FSR is a good thing. It's horrendous and it makes these games look awful. And when we revisit these games, if a future Xbox exists, these games are going to look downright ugly unless they do graphical updates, and a lot of these games probably won't get it. Then we have Fidelity mode. So Fidelity is actually like quite a bump up in terms of the experience. I think you'll immediately kind of notice that within the backdrop there. We got some ray tracing. So we've got RT reflections and ambient occlusion. So you'll notice like literally right away, like ray trace reflections, like the water and stuff like that. You can actually see what's going on. It's hyper blurry, so it's more of like you just kind of notice it in the backdrop as opposed to enjoying the beauty of it. But it's kind of cool, right? Like, it's a neat effect because those are real reflections. That's the whole point of ray tracing, which, again, I am a big supporter of. I love ray tracing. I think it's great. And I think in general, like, the lighting and stuff. Like, this game, I should probably have played on my 4090 because I bet it looks really beautiful in its old 360 style way, but yeah, kind of rough. So this one is like 1080p, temporarily scaled to 4K. And you could definitely notice that because it is very blurry. 30 FPS is what you get here, which is kind of expected for a Fidelity mode. So, you know, not really the way I would recommend playing an action game. But if you do want the nostalgia of the 360 further, I guess this is maybe a mode for you. But yeah, I just really wasn't a huge fan of this mode. Like, it does look a lot nicer, but not really huge on, you know, the visual fidelity of it. Being like this and then having like like not fluid frame rate kind of going on. That, to me, that wasn't an ideal way to experience the ambience and the style of Dragon Age. There is also HDR support. There is spatial sound support. And this is an experience where I had a numerous... Oh, that feels so much better. Numerous crashes. I think I was up to about 15 across my roughly 20-hour journey of the campaign. Most people will likely spend 30 hours in this game at least, I would imagine. Especially with the variety of side mission, side activities, side emotive type things, or emotion type things to do with your squad mates. Those are various options here. I had 3 hard crashes where it shuts off your console, and then the rest were soft crashes, so like a dozen soft crashes back to the dashboard. Luckily, the console is really fast for loading up, I guess you would say, the game again, so it wasn't the biggest deal in the world, and this game does have really kind checkpoints, overly kind checkpoints. So yeah, but obviously crashing like that is a little ridiculous, and it really kills the tension of a big battle that you're in when, you know, literally everything comes crashing down, which to me was a bit of a bummer for sure. And not ideal. I do hope that they clean that up. It just seems like at times the game would get overloaded if there was X amount of NPCs in one area. You would see like the FSR really kicking in, it would be super fuzzy, and then the game would crash. I actually had a few different types of crashes. One where like the console got really loud. That's always a favorite of mine, you know, at whatever hour in the morning going, yeah! You know, just like freaking out like a dying cat or something like that. And then there was other ones where it was just like everything froze and then it just crashed and you're like, uh-oh, crash coming on, and yeah, not the best for crash recovery, I guess. So there you go, that's the technical elements of it. Regardless, I would recommend the performance mode. I think that's the better way to play this game. And the choice is really up to you and how you go about it. But I think performance looks relatively okay enough. It's... yeah, I don't know, this FSR stuff just looks awful, and I know it's to help the games look a little bit better, and I don't know. I'd rather have like a little bit of a lower, but clearer picture quality that gets like upgraded someday on a future console than to get FSR, because we're going to have these ugly, murky looking games in future gens, and they're just not going to be very aesthetically pleasing down the road. So anyways, spent a lot of time talking about the technical details, but there is a lot here. This is obviously a Dragon Age game. Inquisition went a little bit larger in scale, and I was kind of hoping we were going to get something like that too. We're in one of the hub-type world areas, so there is a little bit more freedom in these spaces, but you can tell that they are very, very tight spots. So what you do in most of the game, and this doesn't even really show off how linear it is, it literally, you're just moving down like hallway after hallway, mowing down enemies as an action role-playing game. And that's kind of what it is. The combat here, I actually think, is maybe my favorite of the Dragon Age franchise. The combat is fun, engaging, fluid, with a variety of different abilities and your squad mate abilities, ultimates, little rune abilities you can add in. There's a wealth of a skill tree. Now, just keep in mind, and the most generic character role-playing armor choice in modern gaming. But yeah, all the games look like this, which makes them look like mobile games, which is weird. This is, to me, the definitive Assassin's Creed RPG palette choice thing. And if you're wondering about my lower level, we're at a save, which is the point of no return. So, obviously, the point of no return, I lost, the however many hours it takes to, finish the game, quote-unquote. And, yeah, and then we wanted to show off the skill tree, so we've actually got, a pretty wealth of a skill tree with different, specializations that you can get into. I just got into Reaper because I went up the survival skill tree, but, it's all one big thing, and it's got all these winding little areas you can go to. It's actually pretty in-depth. And then all of your character buddies, they all have, ability trees, too, that you can do, and then you can give them different, abilities and outfits and different, clothing things, and you get, a fairly large cast of characters here. But you don't really get to know them, and you don't really care about them, but the game pretends like you really care about them. It's a bit strange of a choice, honestly. It was a bit bizarre, because I was hoping to have more of an emotional tie-in to my character, even doing, the odd little side attempt at romance. This game also doesn't really seem to embrace romance and stuff like we did in kind of, I would say, Mass Effect and that. It feels a little lighter to the touch. In general, the game feels like a phrase I came across when I was streaming it or whatever the whole way through was my first Dragon Age, where it feels a little kiddish, but then at the end it's just really dark. The first half the game is a snooze fest. Seriously, a straight up snooze fest. It was on autoplay. I was kind of having fun because it was easy going. It wasn't difficult. I was just kind of okay, I'm just having an okay time. The game, in general, Dragon Age, the Veilguard is average at best. It's okay. Aggressively alright. It doesn't blow my mind. It doesn't, do something wildly different. It feels like it's regressed in a number of ways is what I was really trying to get to. It feels like something that if it had come out really early on in the Xbox One era, I would have been oh, wow, this is really great. But now, especially after coming off of Baldur's Gate and stuff, it just feels like such a step back. Your choices do not matter. The characters really do not matter. The tone of the game is completely all over the place. It's really kiddish at times, and then it just repeats the narrative like I was mentioning. See, I'm going to keep repeating things to really hammer that across. But no, it really is, my first Dragon Age kind of game, which I thought was strange. And I'm saying my first as it's kiddish, right? Going back to that, Star Trek Discovery kind of thing, where everything is so, happy-go-lucky, and we're all supporting each other. But it never feels serious. It feels like it's a bit of a joke the whole way through. And then, outside of dialogue, where the dialogue's repeated and not really anything to, phone home about, really, really weak dialogue and narrative and character development in this game. You're basically, your choices do not matter. There's not a single choice in this game that actually does anything. I'll be okay, I'm making this, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about it, I'm talking to this dude in this ethereal realm, and I'm this is a big choice. Okay, I choose this, and then immediately your next option is you've automatically chosen both choices. And it's what kind of role-playing is that? You just, it's the theory, the hidden... It's the concept of being able to make the illusion of choice. There we go. That's what I was looking for. The illusion of choice. You're not making 80 choices in this game. You make one big choice at one point in regards to what town you want to go save. But then the whole game is just like another guy whining about you not picking the town, and then ultimately it's like none of it matters at all because there's not really any difference. There's no choice. There's nothing that matters in this game. You just go through a story. And then at the end, you get just penalized to the max if you don't sit there and do the weird little side things with every one of the characters. You don't help one individual find themselves emotionally, or one individual get over their whatever problems. You just get screwed and have the worst of endings because you didn't spend or waste enough of your time doing side missions. I am a very firm believer of when you are playing a game and there are side missions, you will do the side missions because the side missions are engaging or interesting or want you to do them, or I have the time to do them. But there's this weird thing where this game really just hates you if you don't sit there and do every little side thing, because your experience is just gonna suck. And it's just like the most disappointing sort of setup from like a story perspective, because like the gameplay and stuff like that, fighting is fine, linear stuff is okay if it's done right. Like, I don't hate like linear gameplay. As I said, I was literally cheering on, you know, what do we have here? Warhammer Space Marine not too long ago. And that's a very linear game, but that game, to me, is a throwback to 360 games in the best of ways, whereas this just feels so simplistic. Like, I do expect certain evolutions for role-playing games. Like, they should be getting more expansive, more choice-driven, more exciting. They should be willing to push boundaries, be more grim and exciting. And it's just, like, so tonally overly happy about everything in the world, to the point where I just don't really care. And then I was talking about the fact that the game just like really changes like halfway through. There's a certain point where you're literally fighting like this three-headed or this multi-headed thing, and it's just like the most predictable, boring, generic boss fight. But like at all of a sudden, halfway through the level, you go from like, oh, this is like a total snooze fest of the game where I'm just walking through everything on normal difficulty. And then all of a sudden, it's just grueling. But it's not like it's difficulty scaling. The enemies, they match your level in most scenarios. So the game, instead of like actually creating a sense of difficulty or more challenging or interesting characters, what they do is they go to sponge. So the game just becomes spongier and spongier along the way. So an enemy that has a health bar that you would take out in like a couple hits early on in the game takes like 15 and then 20, and then you're just sitting there very slowly grinding through hordes. So the game feels as though it takes longer the more you go through it, but in actuality, it's only taking longer because it's taking longer for you to kill the same simplistic enemies that you've come across and interacted with prior. So it's sort of like a false sense of difficulty, and by the end, you're just doing these like super spongy attacks. And like every part of the game tries to gate you from actually expanding yourself. So you'll have all these situations where like you have a shopkeep where you can upgrade your gear and everything like that, which I think is cool. But you have to level up the shopkeep, otherwise you get locked away from actually being able to meaningfully use upgraded skills to do more damage against enemies. And it seems to be really capped based on the side of content and things that you do in the game. And it's just really, really bizarre. I don't know, like, again, from a perspective, this game is like, it's okay. Like I was saying, like it's fine. Like it's a very solid, generic sort of like hack and slash role-playing game. There's not really necessarily things that are inherently super wrong with it. You can play here, you'll probably play the first 12 hours or so. Like, again, it's a pretty chunky game. Like, it is lengthy, it's got good value to it. You know, you play through it, it's got a vast cast of characters, lots of individuals you meet. There's lots going on, there's different places you visit, it's got different environments and biomes. It kind of retreads the same, like, enemies and stuff over and over again, but, you know, that's like most role-playing games. So, like, from a certain point of view, the Jedi are evil. No, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's totally fine. Like, it's an average sort of role-playing game. But if you were expecting a big innovation, a big change up on Dragon Age, that sort of, like, next chapter that you've been waiting a long time for. Because, like, just when I think of the Dragon Age games, I think of something like a franchise that was very, like, innovative and exciting, and it was really great to get that kind of level of role-playing for the consoles at the time. It was a pretty big deal having something like that. And I don't know, maybe it wasn't always, like, the darkest or grimmest of franchises. I'm sure every game series has, like, levity and stuff to it. But there was just something about how, like, happy everybody was all the time. Just my character always having the stupidest, happiest, grimmiest face, or grinniest face, despite, like, the worst of situations going on. It kind of felt more like a Thor kind of Ragnarok thing, where it's like, yeah, it's grim, but we're just having a great time doing this together. And the game starts out with, like, the coolest sequence where you're in a bar and everybody decides to fight everyone in the bar. Let's be real here. None of you decided to talk it out in the bar. You all wanted to do a cool fight. And that's really, like, awesome. And then, like, it's almost deceptive because then you just go into, like, linear environment after linear environment. And you're just playing, like, this game that feels like it's, like, a decade too late or something like that. With a story that just really isn't that innovative or exciting and just feels so safe and, I don't know, just like underdeveloped. Like, there's some stuff with characters where it's like supposed to be a big moment for them, but like it's a 2-second thing and then it's just thrown to the side where it just kind of feels like it's just shoved in there just to kind of like cater a bit to things. And it's strange because you could really have some interesting dialogue and conversation and characters dealing with their emotional problems or their, you know, identities and stuff, but it's just so, like, half-baked and underdeveloped that it just kind of feels like it's kind of all these things for all these little side characters are thrown in there, but there's no meaningful development behind it. There's no depth, there's no detail, there's no real care. You're not even really motivated to know the characters. Like, randomly it's like, oh, I've got a problem with stone, and then, like, later on in the game it's like, oh, my stone problem, and I was like, oh yeah, I never really cared about that. And it's just like, where am I for like a respawn point? Am I anywhere near where I was? Like, where am I right now? I don't even know this location. Oh, I went all the way over there. Why am I all the way back here? This is pretty far away, I gotta be honest with you. Whatever. Anyways, so like the game plays fine. Outside of the fact that it, like, you know, crashes fairly often. And, like, it looks okay. And, you know, you get to kind of make your character, and the character customizer is fairly in-depth. You still get that sort of Frostbite aesthetic that looks a little like, you know, like the character face models are a little, like, plasticky, and, you know, like the rocks and stuff do feel a bit aged in comparison to Yui, and they need some work there. But I think they have, like, a decently nice high fantasy kind of style going on. Oh, I forgot you drown in the waters. And, like, I think you could get some value out of it if you like this type of game. It's just, like, when I've seen big leaps and bounds in technology, or not even technology, but storytelling and character development and everything like that, I just, like, I kind of expect a bit more from role-playing games. You know, it's fun, but, like, if you're doing something that's a throwback 360 era game, it's gotta be just exciting and thrilling and fun. Like, you can have a simpler world that's more linear, but it's gotta be exciting and enticing and intoxicating to dive into. It's gotta be just a great time. And I do wish they would have embraced a bit more of a grimdark tone. It felt like they kind of wanted to, but they never really fully committed to that. And, like, Dragon Age of the Veilguard, it's okay. It's average, it's alright. I don't know if it'll age the best. It does have weak dialogue. It does have some character development issues. I don't know, at the end of the day it was alright, but it felt really spongy. I wasn't necessarily blown away by it, and I think in the long term, it'll probably be one of the more forgettable role-playing games I kind of play and engage with. There's so many options these days out there, and, like, I expect something a little bit more exciting and boundary pushing. But I think if you like this type of gameplay, you've seen this, you're like, okay, this looks like a fun, okay fantasy time for me. I think you'll have fun with it, and you'll be fine with it. You just have to get used to a little bit of sponge, but you can go on a little bit of an adventure. Just make sure you do all the side things, otherwise the game will absolutely screw you to the limit. Thanks, BioWare, for that. But, yeah, that's Dragon Age of the Veilguard. Maybe we'll do another Dragon Age game again someday.